draft treatment, and after receiving feedback, we now know basically the concept to our film and the details. So the film title is Wood Witch, and it's within the horror genre. The subgenre is unnatural horror. So looking at the plot synopsis then.
Okay, so we put Sam Baker is a typical worker from London. His office job leads him heading for a weekend in the north of England, in the rural area of Yorkshire. As he makes his commute over the quiet moors of England, he crashes his car on a remote road after seeing a grotesquely masked man in the road. Gradually waking up after his accident, he finds himself surrounded by the concerned residents of Woodwich. He meets Constance Browning, who appears to be the town's doctor and main carer as he recovers. He is initially thankful for their concern, but grows suspicious as nurturing becomes intimidating, and he realises that they are limiting his contact to the outside world. After 2 failed attempts to leave the town, he begins to note the frequent appearance of a particular symbol in the town. He decides to investigate further and discovers the true nature of the town. Helped by his only ally, a young waitress named Laura, he discovers that the town centres around a cult at which Constance is at the helm. Can I start again?
Do you want to start again?
Can you read it?
Do you want me to read it?
Yeah.
Can we just edit this? We can edit this too.
Yeah.
So, Sam Baker is a typical worker from London. His office job leads him heading for a weekend in the north of England, in the rural area of Yorkshire. As he makes his commute over the quiet moors of England, he crashes his car onto a remote road after seeing a grotesquely masked man in the road. Gradually waking after his accident, he finds himself surrounded by the concerned residents of Wychwood. I knew it was the wrong way around. I'll start again.
Fiona went over the treatment, she mentioned that it all got to be in like present tense, like he did this.
Yeah.
As if he's doing it right now.
Yeah. Sam Baker is a typical worker from London. His office job leads him heading for a weekend in the north of England, in the rural area of Yorkshire. As he makes his commute over the quiet moors of England, he crashes his car onto a remote road after seeing a grotesquely masked man in the road. Gradually waking after his accident, he finds himself surrounded by the concerned residents of Woodwich. He meets Constance Browning, who appears to be the town's doctor and his main carer as he recovers. He is initially thankful for their concern, but grows suspicious as nurturing becomes intimidating and he realises they are limiting his contact to the outside world. After 2 failed attempts to leave the town, he begins to note the frequent appearance of a particular symbol in the town. He decides to investigate further and discovers the true nature of the town. Helped by his only ally, a young waitress named Laura, he discovers that the town centres around a cult at which Constance is at the helm. They believe that human sacrifice will bring salvation and plan to use Sam in the ritual. When Laura attempts to assist Sam's escape, she is murdered by the cult. He is captured by the cult's guards of paradise but manages to set their church alight before he is sacrificed. He leaves the town listening to their tortured screams. He makes his way to the road, battered and bruised. He flags down a car and seems finally peaceful in the knowledge that he has escaped. However, Constance is in the vehicle. So obviously there were a few influences that we looked at, so sort of the themes for the film and also for our own designs and looking at cinematography. So here were our influences and inspirations.
We looked at the film and the game series of Silent Hill, which is very similar to ours because it involves like a crash and like cult and weird like
Town.
Yeah. So we also looked at the trailer and the poster and website for that. We looked at The Wicker Man, which is an older film, but we like the way it used cult. They use like animal masks and we use that for inspiration for our props. We also looked at the Japanese version of the film Hansel and Gretel as one of our influences. And then we looked at the structure and scenes to include so that our trailer wasn't just a trailer, it was a breakdown of the film. So we thought about the car crash of when he gets into the town. A scene called Welcome to Woodwich, which is Sam Baker meeting the main antagonist Constance. Him meeting with Laura. him noticing the symbol around the town, and then him trying to escape, and the cult practice and the strange locals. We'd have like jump scenes, jump cuts from them scenes, and then finally the burning of the church.
We looked at generic conventions of horror as well, so like a chase that's like involved in a lot of different horror films. The binary opposites, like city versus rural, like not knowing like what's in the rural, what's in the
Like
city.
he's an outsider. He's
Yeah.
from the city, yeah.
Then religion, like when it's portrayed as a bad thing or a good thing. Human sacrifice. Yeah. And cult iconography, which is involved in the films that we looked at, like our influences. And then we've got like the stereotypes of characters as well, so like the uneducated villagers, where like they've only been learned what the head of the village want them to learn. A clear protagonist, which is like the dictator, and the clear antagonist, which is the village leader.
Okay. So for our settings and locations, we were thinking rural, kind of empty, old style town, and we were going to go up to Saddleworth and surrounding areas, and find an appropriate church for scenes where the church is either burnt or scenes inside the church. A home interior, which you need to show inside activity, and a car interior for the crashes, well, the crash. In terms of costumes, we decided Sam would be dressed quite smartly as a like business type city guy. He had a car and probably a smartphone. The villagers, in contrast, are old-fashioned, very airy and wearing white, wearing masks, and props such as petrol cans, swords, lighters for his general scenes.
So we sort of looked also at the actual construction of it as a film, and what we're going to try and include in our trailer. So we looked at the cinematography and lighting. We definitely know that we want sort of establishing shots of the village, how very, for them to be very disorientated, low angles and high angles to establish that it is sort of a strange place to
Very
be.
different
Yeah.
from the town.
Yeah, it's it's not a welcoming place. There'll be lots of dark shadows, and as is typical to horror films. There'll also be, we were looking at constructing a car crash, which is actually going to be very hard, one of the biggest challenges. But also, as with the lighting of the the torching of the church, we're going to use a combination of close-ups to sort of suggest what's happening as opposed to it actually happening.
Yeah.
Use of sound. We'll be looking at using diegetic sound taken straight from the film, so dialogue. For example, we want the line "Welcome to Woolwich" to be said by Constance. We'll be having non-diegetic music with the pace building up and getting louder as the pacing of the shots gets faster. We'll also be having things to do with juxtaposition of sound. So we'll be having church bells and fluttering birds, which also links in with sort of our main themes of the film, churches and religion, but also that sort of contrapuntal use of sound will make it seem more eerie.
In like terms of editing and effects, we're looking at the cinematography and sound, so we were thinking like fades in the opening sequence leading up to jump cuts as the sequence goes on, so that as the music gets faster, the editing gets faster, and things become less organised and like so it's a bit more thrilling. We was going to use a negative effect when we go on the road sign of Woolwich, so it has that like
Negative colour.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
saw that on the Silent Hill trailer, didn't we? And thought
Yeah.
that would be, to make it obvious that it's a very significant,
Yeah.
yeah.
because the audience will associate the film title Woolwich with, oh wait, yeah, it's
Drops.
there now, isn't it?
Yeah. And we also thought about using a grey filter just to make it look more scary. And for title screens, we thought not to use as much because for the sound we want diegetic clips
It
from
should
the film
explain the story.
instead of it should explain the story without us having to explain it. So we just want Woodwich and maybe Coming Soon. And finally, our target audience is going to be a 15, and in particular a niche independent audience. Because it's horror, we're thinking more young adults, and that's why we had it as 15, because it's not.
We're not
on the
going to have gore.
Yeah.
The BBFC says that
It's not.
Yeah.
It doesn't qualify for an 18.
Yeah.
But it's not a very typical idea, so maybe that's why it linked to the niche independent audience.
And
Good job,
that
guys.
is so